Glucose burns at 4 calories per gram, whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. Now this piece of information, which is fact, is in just about every weight loss book as proof that if you want to lose weight, don't eat the fat. It's going to give you more than twice the calories. But what the people don't understand is what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. And if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. It's going to give you more than twice the units of energy compared to glucose. But if you're eating more calories than you can burn, yes, it's going to be stored. Did you know that nearly 70% of adults worldwide are overweight or obese, and the number keeps rising every year? Some people eat what seems like a normal diet and still gain pounds, while others eat more and never see a single extra kilo. It's not genetics, and it's not luck. Every day, millions of people are unknowingly sabotaging their metabolism, causing their bodies to store fat even when they think they're eating healthy. Shockingly, some of the most common habits we consider normal, like when we eat, how we drink, or even the timing of our meals, can trigger your body to hold on to extra weight. The scary truth? Most of us have been following advice that actually makes weight gain worse, and we've been doing it for decades. It's no wonder people feel frustrated, exhausted, and hopeless when the scale won't budge. Stay tuned as I reveal the scientific reasons behind weight gain and how to shed those extra pounds. One of the best things that you can do for weight loss is to eat breakfast like a king. I have to admit that I think I eat lunch like a king and breakfast like a queen, but whatever. And sometimes the queen eats as much as the king. Lunch like a queen, and then tea like a pauper, or you call it supper, yeah? I think that when I say tea, you probably think I mean a cup of tea, yeah? But we call an evening meal tea. And as one lady said to me, well, what do paupers eat? I said, sometimes nothing. What many people are doing today, and I see it in many countries I go to, they eat breakfast like the pauper, they eat lunch like the pauper, and the tea or the supper is the king and the queen together. That's like going on a journey, and you start your long journey and you go to the gas station, we call it a petrol station, call it a gas station, and just put a little bit in. And then an hour later, put a little bit more in. And then an hour later, put a little bit more in. And then you've done this all day. And then you finally get to your destination. You go into the gas station and you fill your tank and then park it in the garage. How much sense does that make? And yet that's what most people are doing. Little bit here, little bit there, little bit there. End of the day, king and the queen together. And the body says, finally we've got some nourishment. And then they say, oh no, they've gone to bed. So what are we going to do with all these calories, these units of energy? We're just going to have to store them. It's really only probably the last 100 years that the main meal has been had at the end of the day. In fact, traditionally the main meal was always in the middle of the day, especially before electricity, because they didn't have the light at night and it was just more convenient. I was talking to a man who grew up in a little English village. So I was talking to him about 18 years ago, and then he was in his 60s. And he said, the schools closed down, the mines and the businesses closed down, and everyone used to go home and have their main meal. And he said at night we'd have bread and dripping. Well, that was considered something like. So in many cultures you will see that traditionally the main meal was always had in the middle of the day. But again, I don't think anyone planned it. It's just this vast society. When you shift your biggest meal to the end of the day, your body doesn't just sit on that energy without reason. There's real science showing that eating more later can make weight control harder. A large study that looked at meal timing and body weight found that people whose largest meal was dinner had a higher average BMI and a greater likelihood of obesity than those who ate their biggest meal earlier, especially at lunch. Eating more than 3 times a day and having lunch as the biggest meal were linked with a 32% lower chance of being obese. Your metabolism doesn't reset like a machine at midnight instead of noon. The genes that regulate how you process food follow a daily rhythm tied to daylight and rest cycles. When most calories and carbohydrates are consumed in the morning, the body's metabolic network synchronizes better with its internal clock, improving how it handles sugar and energy turnover throughout the day. That matters because insulin sensitivity, the body's ability to use blood sugar for energy instead of storing it, tends to be higher earlier in the day. One clinical experiment in teens showed that eating breakfast reduced the blood sugar spike after lunch compared to skipping the first meal. This effect of breakfast helping control blood sugar after later meals is called the second meal effect. Large population data add another layer. People who regularly eat breakfast more than 3 times a week have lower risks of type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure and stroke compared with those who eat it less often. There's also evidence suggesting that when you finish eating early in the evening, you may reduce hunger and cravings later at night. Studies have seen that people who eat later in the day feel hungrier overall and have lower levels of leptin, a hormone that signals fullness. And it's not only about weight. Some research has linked earlier meals and longer overnight fasts with lower risk of heart disease. Your body switches into a rest and repair mode overnight, and heavy late-night eating can disrupt this process, leading to poorer sleep and worse glucose control. So what's the takeaway? It's not that calories at night magically turn straight into fat, but timing your meals to match your body's natural metabolic rhythm, putting more energy into breakfast and lunch and eating lighter in the evening can help with appetite control, blood sugar management, and sustained weight loss. Over time, even small changes in meal timing can add up to real, measurable differences in how your body stores and uses energy. Changing the times that you eat, that makes a big difference. And changing the food you eat makes a huge difference. I was reading the testimony of a chef. He was large, obese. And he said he used to eat little bits all day long. All day long. That's all he'd eat, little bits all day long. So he decided to do an experiment. He decided to get all the little bits and put it into 3 meals. He knew the old saying, and have most of it at breakfast and lunch. And he lost a lot of weight. And he ate the same amount of food. And he ate the same type of food. He just changed the times when he did it. Because he gave his stomach a break. You see, it's like my husband. He says, I had a 2-hour job to do in the office today. He said, at the end of the day, it's 8 hours later and I still haven't done it. Because he said someone would ring up. Someone would come into the office. I kept getting interrupted. Has that ever happened to you? That's exactly what happens to digestion. When we put food in our stomach, we should now leave it. Let it do its work. After about an hour and a half, 2 hours, start sipping on some water. Then you don't water down your hydrochloric acid. It takes 3.5 to 4 hours to digest a meal. If a person has a meal of watermelon, that's probably gone in about 2 hours. But when someone has a balanced meal, which is shown here, it takes about 3.5 to 4 hours to digest. And then the stomach loves a 1-hour rest. Let your stomach have a rest between meals. And in that rest time, it has time to revive and restore and replace the digestive enzymes it used at the last meal. And that's why the time-restricted eating, we've talked about this a couple of times, time-restricted eating is basically a modern name for this. Time-restricted eating, it's from the intermittent fasting, the 5-2 diet, a lot of people are familiar with that. Dr. Michael Mosley, in his book Fast Diet, he goes into into the research showing why this is so effective, it's eating twice in a 24-hour period. They suggest eating a large meal at 1 and another meal at 7. But I was talking to one girl and she said, I'm fading by 10 in the morning. And she said, and I can't sleep at night because I've got so much food in my stomach. When we go to sleep, our stomach wants to sleep. Most of what we've been talking about, letting your stomach rest between meals, eating most calories earlier in the day, isn't just old-fashioned talk. There's actual research showing that when you shorten your eating window each day, a lot of positive changes can happen inside your body. Scientists call this approach time-restricted eating, and it doesn't mean you have to count calories. You simply limit the hours you eat food each day. In one study, people with something called metabolic syndrome, a cluster of issues like high blood sugar, extra belly fat, and high blood pressure, were asked to compress their eating into an 8 to 10 hour window daily. After 3 months, they lost about 3% to 4% of their body weight, lowered their BMI, and reduced trunk fat, which is the fat around the abdomen linked to higher disease risk. What's interesting is that this happened without calorie counting. The body was simply working more efficiently by having longer daily breaks from food. Another large review looked at nearly 2,500 people across 29 clinical trials and found that meal timing strategies like time-restricted eating, eating fewer times per day, and putting more of your calories earlier instead of later were tied to greater weight loss and better markers of metabolic health over at least 12 weeks. Part of the reason this works has to do with something called your circadian rhythm. That's your internal clock that runs on a roughly 24-hour cycle. And it not only tells you when to sleep and wake up, it also affects how your metabolism functions throughout the day. Eating in sync with this rhythm, eating when your body is more active and digesting well, seems to help digestion and energy use. Time-restricted eating has shown signs of improving blood sugar control and insulin sensitivity too. Several studies report that limiting the eating window can help with fasting glucose and lower insulin resistance, even without changing what you eat. This means your body may handle sugar better and not need to store as much as fat. There's also early evidence showing benefits for heart health. Some data suggest modest improvements in blood pressure and markers linked to inflammation and oxidative stress, both of which are connected to heart disease risk. So number 2 for weight loss, low carbohydrate. Low carb, high fibre. Generous protein and healthy fats. I gave the story this morning when I talked about diabetes of Jim, the guy who was a type 1 diabetic and got off all his medication. And do you remember the weight loss he experienced? Quite phenomenal. And it wasn't just that he was eating breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen and tea like a pauper. It wasn't just that he was on a low carbohydrate, high fibre, generous protein and healthy fat diet. It was also the fact that he began to drink more water. He was having 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. And when you start drinking more water, it's also time to start having some whole salt. But it's the 4th point that I think made a dramatic effect. It all has an effect. And that was the high-intensity interval training. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you inside the cell and show you why the high-intensity interval training is so effective. So this is intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery, and it's done for a cycle. And Doug McGuff, the heart doctor, he suggests 30 seconds high intensity, 90 seconds recovery for a cycle of 6. There's 15 minutes a day. Sorry, but no excuse. If you haven't got 15 minutes, start to write down how long you're on the computer, how long are you on the phone, how long are you on your iPad. Now that we've talked about how changing when you eat and structuring your meals matters, let's dig deeper into how the choices you make around diet and exercise can actually change your body's chemistry and help you lose weight in a sustainable way. We already discussed that eating more water and adjusting your meal timing can help regulate digestion, but the type of calories you eat matters too. Clinical research comparing different diet patterns shows that low-carbohydrate diets often lead to greater weight loss and improvements in metabolic health than standard low-fat or calorie-restricted diets. In one multi-center randomized trial, people following a low-carb diet lost more weight and reduced their waist size more effectively than those on a calorie-restricted diet, even when overall calories stayed the same. In that study, cutting carbohydrates to about 26% of total energy intake led to bigger changes in body fat and waist circumference compared with calorie restriction alone. What this suggests is that when you reduce carbohydrates, your body shifts toward burning stored fat for fuel rather than primarily running on glucose. This shift doesn't just affect the number on the scale, it also affects how your metabolism works at rest and after meals. In fact, diets low in carbs can increase energy expenditure a bit, helping your body burn slightly more calories throughout the day. Now let's bring this back to exercise. You already heard about high-intensity interval training, HIIT, being part of that fourth key point for transformation. What exactly does HIIT do inside the body, and why do scientists talk about it so much? HIIT involves short bursts of high effort followed by recovery periods. Research shows that this type of training improves aerobic capacity, how your muscles use oxygen, body composition, and markers linked to metabolic health. A review of multiple studies found that even with a relatively short weekly time commitment, HIIT can reduce body fat and waist circumference, particularly in people who are overweight or obese. It can also improve fasting glucose and insulin sensitivity, which helps the body regulate blood sugar more effectively. One important point to make here is that HIIT doesn't need to be hours at the gym to work. Many protocols involve something like 30 seconds of intense exercise followed by 90 seconds of rest, repeated for a total session of maybe 15 minutes. That's it. But that quick, hard push triggers metabolic changes that continue after the workout ends. Researchers call this the afterburn effect, scientifically known as excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, EPOC. It means you keep burning extra calories for hours after the session ends. That effect alone can make a difference when you're trying to reduce fat stores. A review of 13 studies involving over 400 adults showed that both high-intensity interval training and traditional steady-state exercise lowered body fat and waist size, even though the HIIT sessions took less time. Here's another important thing. HIIT improves how your body uses glucose and fats, not just weight alone. Systematic reviews show that HIIT programs can improve key markers of cardiometabolic health, things like insulin resistance and cholesterol, even when changes in body weight are modest. This means people who do HIIT regularly may manage blood sugar better and reduce risk factors associated with diabetes and heart disease. Let's connect the dots. You remember Jim, the guy who did this change and got off his medication? Combining improved nutrition, like cutting down carbs and eating protein and healthy fats, proper hydration and structured exercise like HIIT helped push his metabolism into a more efficient mode. Drinking more water itself supports metabolic functions at the cellular level, helping your digestive system work more smoothly and aiding fat loss as part of an overall healthy pattern. Even hydration alone has been linked to small increases in calorie burn because water is essential for all of your cells to function properly. Another benefit of combining diet and HIIT is that exercise helps protect muscle mass while you're losing fat. That's important because muscle burns more calories at rest than fat does. Some research shows that aerobic workouts combined with HIIT can help maintain lean tissue better than dieting alone, which keeps your resting metabolic rate higher. What all this boils down to is that weight loss isn't just about eating less. It's about eating right, timing those meals so your body can use the energy efficiently, drinking enough water so your cells can run at full capacity, and pairing that with the kind of exercise that boosts metabolism and muscle strength, even if you only spend a short amount of time doing it. You've already taken the first step by shifting when you eat. Adding smart nutrition, hydration, and HIIT brings you closer to a pattern that matches how your body naturally wants to work. Over weeks and months, these small but consistent changes add up to real, measurable improvements in how you feel, how your body uses energy, and how you look. If you found this helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our tips. Drop a comment below and let me know which change you're going to try first: meal timing, HIIT, or hydration. And don't forget to share this video with someone who could use a little boost in their health journey.